People often say that money has no smell, but if you live in Napa Valley long enough, you'll know that's a lie. Here, money smells like charred French oak, the scent of brand new leather interiors of cars gliding along St. Helena Highway, and the cold disdain that the elite hold for people like Elara Vance. Elara, 22 years old, with hands stained red from cold water and cleaning chemicals, was kneeling on the damp concrete floor of the Sterling Vineyard's cellar. She wasn't a sommelier, nor was she a VIP guest invited to the lavish tasting parties on the upper floors. She was a cellar rat, quite literally, a name given to those doing the lowest work, the ones who scrubbed tanks, connected hoses, and worked in the shadows to create the ruby red liquid for which the wealthy would gladly pay thousands of dollars a bottle. "Hey, orphan girl, what are you dreaming about? Tank 402 isn't going to clean itself." The piercing shout of Marcus Thorne, Sterling's chief operating officer, echoed like a whip crack through the silence. Marcus was a man in his 40s, always dressed in expensive Italian suits, but possessing the eyes of a hungry vulture. He hated Elara, not because she was lazy, but because she was a defective product of the California foster care system, with no degree, no family background, and worst of all, her eyes were far too bright for someone of her status. Elara started, quickly bowing her head, saying she was sorry, Mr. Thorne, but she smelled something strange in Tank 402. Marcus erupted in a dry, mocking laugh. He stepped closer, the polished tip of his leather shoe stopping right in front of Elara's face, forcing her to look up at him from her lowly position. "What do you smell? Your own stench?" Marcus leaned down, whispering low enough for other employees to hear and snicker, telling her to listen, that she was just trash with a GED, and she wasn't paid to think, she was paid to shut up and clean the tank before Mr. Julian arrived for inspection. Elara bit her lip until the metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him that the expensive American oak barrel was infected with Brettanomyces, a deadly yeast that could turn fine wine into the smell of medical bandages and horse manure in a matter of weeks. Her sense of smell had never been wrong. It was a gift, or perhaps a curse, granted by God. She could sense an approaching rain from 3 miles away, or the scent of a lie on someone standing before her. But she knew the words of a girl from an orphanage carried no weight against the massive ego of a powerful man like Marcus. "Yes, sir," Elara murmured, swallowing her bitter resentment. She gripped her brush and continued scrubbing as Marcus walked away triumphantly, leaving behind a final insulting remark about not wanting to see her face when the shareholders arrived because she ruined the company's image. While Elara struggled in the dark cellar, 10 miles away on the winding hillside highway, another tragedy was waiting to strike, threatening to forever change the fate of the entire Sterling empire. Julian Sterling, the king of Cabernet and sole heir to the Sterling lineage, was driving his silver Aston Martin through the thick early morning mist. At 34, Julian had it all: the looks of a Greek god, a billion-dollar fortune, and a beautiful fiancée, Vanessa DeLuca. However, he was also known for being cold, ruthless, and arrogant. To Julian, people were merely tools, and emotions were an unnecessary expense on a balance sheet. "I don't care what they say, Marcus," Julian barked into his Bluetooth headset, his voice razor-sharp, stating that if the wine batch didn't meet standards, he'd pour it all out, as he'd rather lose $5 million than let the Sterling name be tarnished by gutter water, ordering him to fire the taster immediately. He had no idea that the gutter water he feared was exactly what the poor girl in the cellar had warned about and was ignored. Suddenly, from the thick white fog, a truck lost control and lunged out like a giant beast. Julian's eyes widened, his pupils constricted as he slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched painfully on the slick road, tearing through the valley's silence. A horrific crash followed, the sound of crushing metal and shattering glass. The Aston Martin flipped through the air before plunging into a deep ravine, rolling several times until it slammed into an ancient oak tree. Julian Sterling's world went black. A dense darkness consumed him. There were no more shouts, no more million-dollar contracts, only a terrifying silence and the heavy scent of gasoline mixing with fresh blood.
Back at the cellar, Elara suddenly shivered. A glass on the shelf fell and shattered into pieces. She looked up, her heart pounding for no reason. The distant wail of sirens began to echo, piercing the valley's fake tranquility. Only hours later, the news exploded like an atomic bomb. Julian Sterling, the king of Cabernet and sole heir to the Sterling lineage, had been in a catastrophic accident. He survived, but at a devastating cost. The atmosphere at the Sterling estate changed at a dizzying pace. Those who had bowed to Julian yesterday now began to whisper with shifty eyes. Vanessa DeLuca, the perfect fiancée, appeared at the hospital not with swollen eyes from crying, but in a meticulously tailored black dress and flawless makeup. She stood in the hospital lobby, clutching Marcus Thorne's hand, and Elara, who happened to be there to deliver clothes, saw a grip that was not a comfort between friends, but a grip of accomplices. "The doctor says he might be permanently blind and paralyzed," Vanessa said, her voice trembling with fake emotion, while her eyes flashed with cold calculation, asking Marcus what they should do about the company. "We'll take care of it," Marcus replied, his lips curling into a smirk that only a demon could understand, adding that they would take care of Julian as well. Elara stood tucked behind a door, clutching the box of Julian's clothes the housekeeper had asked her to bring. She felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know if Julian Sterling was a good man or bad man, but she knew the feeling of having the whole world turn its back on you. She saw the loneliness waiting for that once powerful man. Fate was truly ironic. A man who had everything, but was about to lose his eyes and his legs, and a girl who had nothing but calloused hands and a buried genius for scent. Two people from opposite ends of society, yet about to be drawn by a cruel conspiracy unfolding beneath the glamorous veneer of $1,000 wine bottles. Elara knew, whether she wanted to or not, she was about to enter a war where the truth was bitter than the tannins of unripe grapes. But she didn't know yet that in the darkness of that cellar and this tragedy, her true power would be awakened. Night fell over Napa Valley, but Julian Sterling's nightmare and Elara Vance's new life had only just begun.
You know, they often say home is where the storm stops behind the door, but for Julian Sterling, when the specialized ambulance brought him back to the Sterling estate, that was when the real storm truly began. The massive iron gates, carved with intricate grape patterns, swung open not to welcome a returning king, but as if to swallow a prisoner into the darkness. The Sterling Mansion, a Spanish colonial masterpiece worth hundreds of millions, once Julian's greatest pride, was now eerily silent. There were no parties, no jazz, only the hurried footsteps of servants keeping their heads low, fearful as if walking through a minefield. Julian was taken to the master bedroom in the West Wing, the largest space in the house, yet now it felt like a luxury cage. He sat in an expensive electric wheelchair, something Vanessa had called the most convenient gift, in a tone so sweet it felt fake. But Julian didn't need convenience. He needed his legs. He needed his eyes. The world before him was now a murky gray mist mottled with distorted shadows. The doctors called it temporary optic nerve damage from the impact, but how long was temporary? A week? A year? Or forever? Helplessness gnawed at the pride of a man who once stood at the pinnacle of fame, turning him into a wounded beast, fierce and bitter. Out in the hallway, Vanessa DeLuca stood with her arms crossed, leaning against the oak-paneled wall, tapping her Jimmy Choo heels rhythmically against the marble floor. Beside her was Marcus Thorne, his fingers sliding across an iPad as he tracked the Sterling Vineyard stock price plummeting without restraint. "He's breaking things again," Vanessa sighed, showing no pity, only an annoyance as if she had just broken a fingernail. She told Marcus they couldn't let this continue because the board was applying pressure. They wanted a leader who could walk and read financial reports, not a broken man screaming in the dark. Marcus smirked, his cold gaze fixed on the closed bedroom door, telling her not to worry and to let him scream.
He reasoned that the more frantic Julian became, the thicker his psychological medical record would grow, making it as easy as taking candy from a child to strip him of his executive power. But first, they needed someone to clean up the mess inside, as all the professional nurses had already fled. And that was when the name Elara Vance was called. Not because she was capable, but because she was expendable. In the eyes of the owners, Elara was just a number, a cheap commodity. If Julian were to throw a bedside lamp at her head, the company would only need to pay a few $100s in medical bills to settle it. She had no family to sue and no lawyer to demand rights. That is how capitalism works, ruthless and pragmatic to the core. When the housekeeper tossed Elara a crisp white apron and pointed toward the dark room at the end of the hall, her heart hammered. She knew the rumors about the Sterling monster, stories of him throwing hot soup at a former servant just because it was slightly salty. But Elara had no choice. She needed money for her shabby apartment rent and medicine for the chronic back pain from her days scrubbing the cellar. She took a deep breath, gripped the cold doorknob, and stepped inside. The room reeked of disinfectant, old wood, and the sour scent of despair. The curtains were drawn tight. Julian sat with his back to the door, his lonely silhouette etched against the wheelchair. "Get out!" Julian's voice rang out, hoarse and threatening, shouting he didn't need medicine or the pity of vultures. Elara didn't answer right away. She moved softly, trying not to make a sound, placing the food tray and medicine on the table. But Julian's ears, now sharper than ever to compensate for his blindness, heard the tiny clink of porcelain hitting the wood. "I said, get out!" Julian roared, swinging his arm blindly. His firm arm struck the tray. Crash! The piercing sound of shattering rang out. Hot porridge, water, and expensive pills scattered across the floor, splashing onto Elara's apron. By normal reflex, Elara should have screamed or run away crying, but she stood still. She was used to life throwing terrible things at her face. Her silence startled Julian. He panted, waiting for tears, frantic apologies, or the sound of a door slamming shut. But there was nothing, only steady breathing and the soft rustle as Elara knelt to pick up the shards. "Are you deaf?" Julian asked, his voice lower but still sharp, asking if she was a robot Vanessa hired to monitor him. "I'm not deaf, sir," Elara replied, with a strange calmness, showing no fear or subservience. She told him she wasn't a robot and that she was just thinking that if he broke everything, he'd have to take his medicine with his bare hands later. Julian froze. How long had it been since someone dared to speak to him in such a common and blunt tone? No flattery, no fear. He turned his wheelchair, his lifeless eyes directed toward the voice, asking who she was. "I'm Elara. I'm a cellar rat, but they forced me up here today because no one else can stand you." She spoke the truth, a naked truth that made Julian let out a bitter laugh. A cellar rat? Fantastic. Now I've become so pathetic they send a cellar rat to look after me. He rubbed his aching headaches, preparing to throw more harsh words to drive her away. But right then, as Elara leaned in to pick up a porcelain shard near his wheelchair, a scent drifted past Julian's nose. It wasn't the heavy Chanel perfume Vanessa always wore, nor the hateful hospital disinfectant. It was a scent that was heartbreakingly familiar. The smell of damp earth, the smell of charred French oak, and most uniquely, the smell of overripe Cabernet Sauvignon, stained with resin, sun, and wind. It was the smell of labor, the smell of the vineyard, the smell of truth, something Julian hadn't scented since being locked in this glass cage of wealth. In a moment of lost control, Julian reached out, his large hand tightly gripping Elara's calloused hand. The sudden grip startled her, but she didn't pull away. "That smell," Julian whispered, his voice trembling, no longer with anger, but with a frantic longing. He leaned down, taking a deep breath near her calloused hand, asking where she had just come from. Elara looked at the man holding her hand. She didn't see a powerful billionaire. She saw a drowning man catching a piece of driftwood. I just finished scrubbing tank 402, sir, Elara replied softly. American oak, the 2018 vintage. Julian was stunned. Tank 402. That was the batch he was most proud of, the one where he had personally selected the wood for the barrels. Memories flooded back like a deluge. Images of vast vineyards appeared in the darkness of his eyes. He let go of her hand as if he had just touched fire, asking with creeping doubt if she knew about wine. A little, sir. Enough to know, she hesitated, then decided to take a gamble. Enough to know that tank 402 is infected with fungus. It smells like diluted medical iodine. Mr. Thorne didn't believe me, but I know my nose is not wrong. Julian remained silent. The large room fell into stillness. The words of this cellar rat girl were like a bucket of cold water to his face, but also a lightning bolt tearing through his blind night. Infected? His most precious batch? Marcus had reported that everything was perfect. Something just snapped in Julian's mind. Not despair, but suspicion. He realized his world was dark not just because of his eyes, but because of lies. And ironically, the only person bringing him a sliver of truth was this girl with rough hands and the scent of the vineyards clinging to her skin. "Clean it up," Julian said curtly, turning away. But this time his voice didn't sound like a dismissal. "And don't throw those shards away yet. Leave them there." Elara nodded, though he knew he couldn't see. She quietly gathered the mess, feeling the invisible gaze of the powerful man following her, not with sight, but with an awakened sixth sense. She didn't know that the rich scent of wine on her old sleeves had just saved her from being fired, and also planted a fragile seed of hope in the barren land of betrayal. Outside the window, the Napa Valley wind began to howl, carrying the chill of the night, signaling a harsh winter about to engulf the Sterling Empire. But inside this room, an unlikely alliance was beginning to flicker, not with vows, but with the scent of truth.
You know, there's a brutal truth about the American ultra-wealthy that few ever speak aloud. When a king falls, his courtiers don't weep. They simply scramble to see who can carve the choicest cut of meat from the fallen horse. And at the Sterling estate, the atmosphere was exactly that: stifling, artificial, and reeking of betrayal. 2 weeks had passed since Julian Sterling returned as a broken man, and Vanessa DeLuca and Marcus Thorne had begun to show their true faces as ravenous vultures. The first thing they did wasn't to find the best doctor for Julian, but rather a staff purge under the fancy name of corporate restructuring. Can you imagine it? Marcus, with the cold face of an executive used to firing people via email, dismissed Mr. Henderson, the elderly cellar manager who had been with the Sterlings for 40 years, just because he dared to question a new chemical-laden aging process Marcus proposed. Marcus told him he was too old to understand market economics before tossing him a termination notice and a thick NDA, forcing him to sign on the spot if he wanted even a tiny pension. That is how the American dream collapses for loyal workers, squeezed dry and discarded without mercy. Elara witnessed it all. She shrank away like a shadow, quietly polishing mahogany railings, her ears catching every whispered word of the remaining staff trembling in fear of losing their jobs. But what made her skin crawl the most was Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa DeLuca, the woman the press still praised as an icon of love and devotion. In front of the family doctor and camera lenses, she would stroke Julian's hand, her voice choking up as she promised to do anything for his recovery. But the moment the door closed, the smile vanished from her lips as quickly as a candle flame in a storm. One afternoon, while Elara was cleaning a corner of Julian's room, Vanessa walked in on a call, completely ignoring the insignificant maid. She stood before the mirror, reapplying deep red lipstick while talking to someone, perhaps a secret lover or a shady business partner, saying that even though the doctor said his brain was still functioning, who knew how much he actually understood? She claimed he just sat there, drooling and staring into space, and suggested it was time to move him to the Sunrise Care nursing home, as she couldn't let the villa remain a hospital forever and ruin the feng shui of her upcoming parties. Julian sat there, motionless in his wheelchair, eyes fixed on the misty window. But Elara saw his hands grip the armrest so hard his knuckles turned white.
He heard everything. He understood everything. Every word from his fiancée was like a poisoned dagger driven straight into his heart. The feeling of being seen as a burden, a feng shui obstacle in his own home, was more painful than any physical wound. He wanted to scream, to stand up and strangle that wicked woman, but his body wouldn't obey, and reason told him he had to endure. It was the ultimate mental torture. When Vanessa sauntered out, leaving behind a perfume scent so heavy it was nauseating, Julian let his head fall, exhaling a desperate, stifled sob. He thought it was over, that the legendary life of Julian Sterling ended here, in this solitude and humiliation. But right then, a sound broke through the gloom. The window was thrown open. Elara didn't offer empty platitudes. She knew saying everything will be fine was an insult to his pain. Instead, she did something no one else in that house thought of. She brought the outside world to him, not through sight, but through scent. "The wind is blowing from the northwest this afternoon, sir," Elara said, her voice soft yet steady, as if reading a private weather report. She described how it carried the smell of baked clay after last night's rain, mixed with a hint of lemon zest from the neighbor's garden, asking if she could smell the dry grass smoke from the valley below, noting it had a slight bitterness, like the finish of a 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon. Julian lifted his head. For the first time in days, his facial muscles relaxed. Her descriptions weren't flowery prose, they were his language, the language of a winemaker. In the world of connoisseurs, scent is memory, a geographical map. This girl wasn't describing a scene, she was redrawing the map of Napa Valley in his blind mind using his sense of smell. "Cabernet 2015, Julian murmured, his voice hoarse from long silence, remembering the drought, the thick grape skins, the harsh tannins but sweet finish. "Exactly," Elara continued, stepping closer, not too fast, maintaining a respectful but empathetic distance. She told him today's sun, if she could taste it, would be like a Chardonnay aged in stainless steel, sharp, cold, but very clean, with no fake oak or artificial vanilla, just pure sun. Julian turned his face toward her. Though he couldn't see clearly, he felt the cleanness in her soul, just like the sunlight she described. No ulterior motives, no hidden agendas. In this mansion full of masked people, she was the only one who was real. "Why are you doing this?" Julian asked, his voice no longer harsh but tinged with the suspicion of a wounded animal, afraid of another trap, asking if she wanted a tip or for him to tell Marcus to give her a raise. Elara smiled sadly, her eyes looking far out at the neglected vineyards. She told him she grew up in the foster care system and had learned to smell danger, lies, and loneliness. Right now, she said, this room reeked of loneliness so much she couldn't breathe without opening the window. She paused, then looked directly into his lifeless eyes, telling him she didn't need his money. She said she only felt sorry for the vines out there being cared for incorrectly, just like you. That sentence struck Julian's soul harder than any neurostimulant. Just like you. She saw him not as a lifeless corpse in a wheelchair, but as a precious vine being left to rot from pests. An invisible but unbreakable bond began to form between them. It wasn't a Hollywood romance, but an alliance between two outcasts in their own kingdom. Julian realized in this absolute darkness, this cellar rat girl was the only lighthouse he could cling to. And for the first time, he decided he wouldn't wither away in silence. He would live, to hear, to smell, and to wait for the moment to take back what belonged to him.
You know that feeling when you wake up at 3 in the morning and everything is so still that you can hear the hum of the refrigerator downstairs or the crickets in the garden? Multiply that sensitivity 100 times and you'll understand Julian Sterling's world right now. It was the 18th morning since Julian had returned to his luxury prison. As the first ray of sunlight pierced through the curtains, a small miracle occurred. Julian lay motionless, staring into the void as he did every day, when suddenly the murky gray mist before his eyes trembled. It didn't vanish, but from within that blur, he saw a faint streak of light. Then a small electric twitch ran from his heel to his right thigh. Julian nearly screamed. He wanted to bolt up, call a doctor, and shout at Vanessa that he wasn't dead, that he was coming back. But as his mouth began to open, a primal survival instinct, the same one that helped him crush dozens of rivals on Wall Street, pulled him back. A cold, sober voice in his head told him to wait, told him not to let them know. In the darkness of his blindness, Julian's hearing had developed to a terrifying degree. He didn't just hear footsteps, he heard the intent behind them. He heard the rapid heartbeat of Marcus lying about financial reports. He heard the sound of Vanessa surreptitiously texting at midnight with conniving giggles. He realized that if he revealed his recovery now, they wouldn't celebrate, they would likely accelerate his death. So, Julian decided to play the most dangerous game of his life, pretending to still be a broken man. He relaxed his face, letting his eyes stare vacantly into space while his ears stretched out like military radar. His patience was soon rewarded with a horrifying truth. That afternoon, Marcus and Vanessa sat in the study while Julian sat in his wheelchair in the corner, turned toward the wall like a forgotten piece of furniture. They thought he was asleep, or perhaps they simply no longer viewed him as human. Julian heard the clinking of glasses and smelled the expensive Pappy Van Winkle bourbon he had saved for his wedding day. Marcus spoke without a shred of respect, announcing that Omni Group had sent the final contract to buy everything: the land, the brand, the cellars. Julian felt his blood turn to ice. Omni Group was a notorious shark known for gutting family brands to build resorts and turning artisanal wine into cheap industrial soda. Selling to them meant erasing a century of Sterling heritage. Vanessa asked about the price, her voice more eager than concerned. Marcus laughed, a sound like metal scraping glass, saying it was enough for her to buy a Caribbean island and never look at Julian's miserable face again. But he noted one complication. The lawyers needed Julian's signature, or proof that he was completely incapacitated. Vanessa's voice turned cold as a scalpel, suggesting they could easily secure a conservatorship by using heavy sedatives and documenting his recent outbursts. She planned to become his legal guardian once the court declared him insane, sign the papers herself, and dump him in a Nevada asylum where no one would find him. Julian sat there like a stone statue, but his heart hammered with pure rage. Conservatorship, the legal word that had enslaved so many stars and heirs right in their own homes. They didn't just want his money, they wanted to strip away his human rights and turn him into a permanent puppet. Just as they toasted to their cruel plan, the door opened. It was Elara, entering to clear the cluttered papers Marcus had left on Julian's desk. Marcus barked at her, startled, asking who gave her permission to enter. Elara replied softly, with a strange calm, that she was just tidying the tasting notes. Marcus snorted, mocking her to Vanessa as a cellar rat trying to act refined, asking if she even knew how to read. He claimed the papers were the formula for the new red velvet line he was about to launch, a masterpiece. Elara picked up the paper, and Julian listened intently from his corner. He didn't hear her leave. Instead, he heard a faint murmur, too quiet for the drinkers to notice, but clear to him. Elara whispered to herself about the bricks and pH levels, noting they were wrong. She muttered that mixing this ratio of Merlot with American oak for over 6 months would oxidize the tannins too quickly. It wouldn't taste like red velvet, it would taste like old apple cider. Julian was stunned. Those technical details, bricks, pH, tannin ratios, were complex metrics known only to master sommeliers or food chemists. Marcus was creating a disaster, and this cleaning girl had spotted the fatal flaw at a glance. In that moment, amidst the danger of the conspiracy and the humiliation of his condition, Julian saw a flicker of hope. Elara Vance was no ordinary maid. She was a hidden genius. Marcus snatched the paper back, telling her to get out and never touch company secrets again. Elara bowed and retreated, but before leaving, she cast a worried look at Julian. She didn't know he heard everything, or that her murmurs about pH and oak barrels had just saved his life. When the door closed, leaving Julian alone with his enemies, he closed his eyes, not to hide, but to focus. He had weapons now. He knew about the conservatorship and Omni Group, and more importantly, he had found a secret pawn, Elara.
Julian let out the faintest smirk that no one could see. He thought to himself that if they wanted to play a game of deception, he would introduce them to a new player. The war for the throne had officially begun, right there in the dead silence.
You know, there's a popular saying in America, fake it till you make it. But at the dinner party that night at the Sterling estate, Vanessa and Marcus took that phrase to a level of terrifying audacity. It was the launch night for the new wine line, Sterling Heritage, something Marcus marketed as a century of essence, but which was actually just a batch of inferior wine hurriedly blended with artificial flavors to facilitate a quick sell-off to Omni Group. The entire mansion was ablaze with the light of crystal chandeliers, lively jazz echoed from a band hired from San Francisco, and sleek black limousines lined up at the main gate. The guests were all high-profile figures, venture capitalists from Silicon Valley, arrogant food critics from New York, and competitors waiting to tear a piece out of the Sterling empire. Julian, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that now hung loose on his gaunt frame, was wheeled into the center of the ballroom like a museum exhibit. He sat there, head tilted slightly to one side, wearing dark glasses to hide his vacant stare, though he was actually observing everything, playing the role of the deposed king to perfection. But the person suffering the most tonight wasn't Julian, it was Elara. Vanessa had forced her into an old-fashioned servant's uniform, a black dress with a stiff, starched white apron, and assigned her the most grueling task, carrying a tray of wine to serve each VIP guest. Vanessa had whispered into Elara's ear before the party began that she wanted her to know her place, punctuating the remark with a painful pinch to her arm. Elara gritted her teeth and endured it, carrying the heavy silver tray filled with glasses of shimmering red wine. The irony was that with her keen sense of smell, Elara could detect the overwhelming stench of fraud coming from those glasses, the smell of cheap wood soaked in chemicals, industrial yeast, and worst of all, the scent of haste. Yet she had to move through the crowd, listening to the hollow praise of pretentious connoisseurs, marveling at the exquisite finish and subtle oak. Elara wanted to scream that they were drinking sugar-coated vinegar, but she only bowed her head, murmuring, "Yes, sir," and "Please, madam." The peak of cruelty came when Elara passed the VIP section where Catherine Dubois, the most difficult and powerful wine critic on the West Coast, stood talking with Vanessa. Madame Dubois wore an ivory silk satin evening gown, a fabric that a single drop of water could ruin. Vanessa saw Elara approaching, and a dark thought flashed in her eyes. She wanted a scene, a reason to publicly fire Elara while venting her rage on the girl's bothersome detective eyes. As Elara leaned in to offer the wine, Vanessa suddenly extended her leg. It was a tiny, discreet movement beneath her long gown, but it was lethal. Vanessa's sharp stiletto heel hooked Elara's ankle. "Ah!" Elara lost her balance and lunged forward. The silver tray in her hand tilted, and by the cruelest laws of physics, 3 glasses of deep red wine launched into the air, tracing a perfect parabola before crashing onto Madame Dubois' pristine white dress. Crash! The sound of shattering glass drowned out the music. The entire room went silent. Madame Dubois screamed in horror, staring at the wine stains spreading like fresh blood across her chest. Vanessa was the first to shriek, playing the role of the shocked hostess flawlessly. She rushed forward, but instead of helping her guest, she shoved Elara hard, sending her sprawling onto the floor with her hands landing directly on the broken glass. Blood seeped from Elara's palms, mixing with the wine on the marble floor. Julian, sitting nearby, felt his chest ready to explode. He saw it all. He saw Vanessa's leg move. He saw that heartless shove. Hot blood rushed to his brain, and his hands gripped the wheelchair so hard his fingernails bled. A voice screamed in his head to stand up and slap her. His thigh muscles tensed, ready to spring up and protect the innocent girl, but the cold logic of a businessman held him back at the last second. He knew that if he stood up now, the play would be over. Marcus would know he had recovered, and they would liquidate the assets immediately. He needed evidence. He needed to catch them all at once. The helplessness tore at his soul far more than any physical wound. He was forced to sit still, playing the role of the useless cripple, swallowing his tears of rage. "You stupid, useless girl," Vanessa hissed, leaning down to slap Elara across the face. Slap! The sound echoed in the dead silence. 5 red finger marks blossomed on Elara's cheek. Vanessa shrieked that the dress cost more than Elara would ever earn in a lifetime, and that a cellar rat should never have crawled up to a banquet table. Those words were salt in Elara's pride. She hurt not from the glass in her hands, but from the disdainful stares of hundreds of people around her. They looked at her as if she were a filthy germ. But Elara didn't cry. Growing up in an orphanage had taught her how to be trampled by the world. She slowly knelt up, ignoring her bleeding hands, pulled a handkerchief from her apron, and began to wipe Madame Dubois' shoes. She apologized in a voice that trembled but didn't beg. She looked up and met Vanessa's eyes, the gaze of someone who knew the truth but chose silence for the sake of dignity. Marcus stood by, smirking, and lightly kicked Elara as if she were a pile of trash, calling for security to drag her out and deduct her month's pay for the laundry bills. 2 large guards grabbed Elara by the arms and hauled her away. She didn't resist, only turning back to look at Julian one last time. In that brief moment, their eyes locked. Elara saw that Julian no longer had a vacant stare. Behind the dark glasses, she saw a fire burning, a silent apology, and a terrifying vow of vengeance. Julian gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, but to Elara it was everything. His eyes told her to endure, that he had seen everything, and that they would pay. As the door closed behind Elara, the party resumed as if nothing had happened. The music started again, and the laughter returned. That is the American elite. They step over the pain of others as easily as stepping over a puddle, but they didn't know that the puddle they just stepped in wasn't water, it was gasoline, and it would only take one more spark to set this entire house of lies ablaze. Julian sat there, hands still clenched, starting the countdown to the moment he would light that flame. You know that feeling when a party ends? It's the worst time in any American mansion. When the jazz music fades, the last limousines roll out the gates, and the servants begin to clear the wreckage left behind by the elite. It was 2 a.m., and the Sterling estate was submerged in a heavy silence, leaving only the stale scent of cigar smoke clinging to the curtains, and the sour stench of wine rising from expensive rugs waiting to be scrubbed. Elara sat in her tiny maid's room in the basement, hands trembling as she wrapped gauze around a deep gash in her palm. The bleeding had stopped, but the humiliation still seeped through her heart, stinging more than any physical wound. Vanessa had slapped her in front of hundreds. Marcus had mocked her. And worst of all, she had to kneel and wipe the shoes of the very person who insulted her just to keep this job. Why was she so cowardly? Why didn't she just throw her apron in their faces and walk away? The answer was simple and very American, because she had no health insurance, no savings, and a foster care record that made it nearly impossible to find a decent job in this expensive valley. That is the trap of poverty. It holds you tighter than any chain. Suddenly, the old walkie-talkie on the table let out a sharp, static hiss. Julian's voice, deep and gravelly with a strange authority that made Elara's skin crawl, commanded her to come to the West Wing immediately. She wondered if he too wanted to vent his rage on her after the earlier incident. Elara took a deep breath, swallowed her tears, adjusted her disheveled uniform, and climbed the dark stairs. The door to Julian's room was ajar. No lights were on inside, only the cold moonlight casting Julian's silhouette on the wooden floor like a forgotten statue. The air was thick, no longer smelling of disinfectant, but faintly of wine. Elara entered, her heart hammering, asking if he had called for her. Julian didn't turn around. He sat there, fingering a wine glass, the last remnant of the party someone had carelessly left on his table. "How is your hand?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that Elara froze. It wasn't an order or an insult, it was a simple inquiry, yet in this house, it felt like a luxury. Elara stammered that it was just a scratch, and she wouldn't let blood get on the furniture. Julian let out a bitter, soft laugh, saying he wasn't worried about the furniture. He was asking about her. He turned his wheelchair to face her in the shadows, and despite his dark glasses, Elara felt as if he were looking through her soul. He told her to come closer and take the glass. It was the Sterling Heritage, the new wine Marcus had just hailed as a masterpiece. "Taste it," Julian ordered, his voice hardening. Elara hesitated, mentioning she was on duty and wasn't allowed to drink, but Julian snapped, not from anger, but urgency. He told her to forget their damn rules. He wanted her to taste it and tell him the truth, not the lies of the staff or the flattery of the stupid guests. He wanted to know what this garbage really was. Elara looked at the deep red liquid, remembering Marcus's disdain and Vanessa's slap. A surge of fury rose within her, overcoming her fear. She brought the glass to her nose, inhaled deeply, and took a small sip, letting the liquid roll over her tongue to analyze every layer of flavor. "It's fake," Elara said, dropping her hand. Julian leaned in, asking for specifics. Elara's voice became sharp and professional, shedding her usual subservience. She explained that the initial scent of vanilla was too overpowering, proving they used oak chips in stainless steel tanks instead of real barrels to save time and money. She noted the tannins were harsh and disjointed, and the color was far too purple. She stated that Cabernet from this valley never produced a color as dark as printer ink, unless what? Julian urged. Unless they used mega purple, Elara concluded. It was a super concentrated industrial coloring and sweetener used to hide underripe grapes. She told him bluntly that this wasn't premium wine. It was fermented grape juice mixed with chemicals and labeled for $500, an insult to the land. The room fell into absolute silence. Elara held her breath, realizing she had just insulted her employer's product, and waited for an outburst. Instead, she heard the slow, steady sound of clapping. Julian removed his dark glasses and tossed them on the table. His eyes, though still slightly sluggish, were no longer vacant. They burned with a fire of suppressed intelligence and rage. He repeated mega purple, his voice no longer that of a sick man. He called Marcus a bastard for using it in the heritage line, realizing it would kill the brand faster than he thought. He rolled his wheelchair close to her, so close she could smell mint and the danger radiating from him. He told her that with her palate and nose, she could easily be the head sommelier for any 3-star Michelin restaurant in San Francisco, asking her why she stayed here to be trampled. "Because no one believes an orphan without a degree, sir," Elara answered honestly. She told him in America, talent mattered less than certifications and connections. Julian nodded, agreeing that he knew that better than anyone, and that is exactly why he needed her. Elara frowned, confused. "Do you think I've truly lost my mind?" Julian lowered his voice to a whisper, but each word felt heavy. He revealed that he heard everything. Vanessa's plan to commit him to an asylum, Marcus's selling the company to Omni Group, the firing of loyal staff. He knew it all, but he couldn't act while stuck in a wheelchair without eyes and ears on the outside. Elara backed away, stunned, asking how long he had been lucid. "Long enough to know who the enemies are and who is the only person brave enough to tell the truth in this house," he said, looking at her bandaged hand. He called the wound her final loyalty test, noting she hadn't poisoned his glass when she had the chance and protected the company's honor despite the humiliation. Then he asked her, "Do you want revenge?" He clarified it wouldn't be through violence, but by taking back what belonged to them. He promised that when it was over, she would never have to bow to anyone again and be the lead winemaker of Sterling Vineyards. But he needed one thing from her right now. Elara's heart raced. This was an alliance between two people backed into a corner. She looked at the scar on her hand, remembered the slap, and looked into Julian's eyes, seeing determination and trust. "What do you need me to do?" Elara asked firmly. Julian smiled, a rare, genuine smile. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper and a thick stack of cash from underneath his wheelchair cushion, money he had hidden before the accident. He told her that tomorrow, while at the market, she must buy a burner phone with cash at a 7-Eleven. Then she was to contact Arthur Goldman, his father's old lawyer in New York, a man he described as more cunning than anyone. He gave her a code to tell him, the 82 vintage is infected with fungus. He added that she must also find Mr. Henderson, the former manager, telling him that Julian Sterling needed to borrow his nose once more. Elara gripped the paper and the cash, feeling their weight. It wasn't a task, it was the key to flipping the board. For the first time, she felt powerful. She wasn't a cellar rat anymore. She was the king's ally. "I'll do it," Elara said resolutely, "but on one condition." Julian raised an eyebrow in surprise. Elara pointed to the glass on the table and told him that when he took back the company, he had to let her personally pour all the heritage trash down the drain, as she couldn't stand the smell of megapurple for another day. Julian laughed out loud, the most refreshing laugh he'd had in months, and agreed. He told her to go before Vanessa woke up and smelled conspiracy in the room. Elara turned and walked away, her silhouette merging with the dark hallway, but her stride was different now, light, quick, and purposeful. In the dark room behind her, Julian Sterling leaned back and closed his eyes, but this time he didn't see an endless night. He saw the light of a bloody dawn waiting for Vanessa and Marcus. The Shadow Alliance was formed, and Napa Valley was about to witness an earthquake.
Do you know what's more terrifying than a man with a gun? It's a person with a pen and a bottle of sedatives hiding behind the title of guardian. In America, we call it conservatorship abuse. It's the perfect legal trap that Britney Spears and dozens of other wealthy heirs have tasted, being turned into prisoners within their own bodies and estates, legalized by a doctor's signature and a court seal. And at the Sterling mansion, Vanessa DeLuca was laying that very trap, as meticulously and coldly as someone loading a silenced pistol. There were only 24 hours left until the fateful shareholders meeting, the D-Day of this wine empire. The air in the house was so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. Vanessa and Marcus no longer bothered with their fake, worried faces. They walked through the halls with the confidence of those who had already won. Marcus had already booked a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands, while Vanessa was busy picking out a dress for the press conference to announce her fiancé's tragic mental state. That afternoon, Elara was cleaning the glass cabinets in Vanessa's dressing room, a room the size of her entire old apartment, overflowing with Hermes bags and Louboutin heels. Vanessa sat at her vanity, touching up her powder while talking to her corrupt personal doctor, Dr. Philbrick. Her voice was light, as if ordering a salad for lunch, as she demanded the strongest dose, something that would make Julian look utterly manic. Hallucinations, babbling, foaming at the mouth. She wanted the shareholders to see Julian and think of an asylum, not the chairman's seat. 50 milligrams, tonight. Elara stood frozen in the corner, her dust cloth in hand as a chill ran down her spine. 50 milligrams of hallucinogens? Given Julian's fragile state, that dose wouldn't just make him lose his mind, it could kill him or fry his brain permanently. This wasn't just stripping him of his inheritance, it was murder without a blade. "Hey, you!" Vanessa suddenly turned, making Elara jump. She barked at her to stop standing there like a wooden statue and to get the cream-colored handbag from the bed, claiming she needed the special vitamin bottle inside. Elara swallowed hard, trying to keep her legs from shaking. She walked to the bed and picked up the expensive Chanel bag. It was heavy. She unzipped it and immediately saw a small amber glass bottle, unlabeled, tucked between a lipstick and a wallet. Inside were blue capsules, the color of death. Elara's mind raced. If she gave it to Vanessa, Julian would take it at dinner or before the meeting, and he would lose his mind on stage. All their efforts, their plans, and their hopes of toppling Marcus would vanish. Julian would be committed, and she would be thrown back onto the street as a nobody. But if she didn't hand it over, Vanessa would be suspicious. In that life-or-death moment, the survival instinct of a street-smart kid kicked in harder than ever. Elara remembered her own liver supplement, a cheap bottle she bought at CVS to survive her overexhausted nights. Those pills were also capsules, and luckily, the shells were a pale blue, almost identical to Vanessa's poison. As Vanessa grew impatient and stood up, Elara stalled, claiming the zipper was stuck, making clattering noises to hide her racing heart. She turned her back to Vanessa, shielding the view with her small frame. With hands trembling, yet as quick as a street magician, she pulled the supplement bottle from her apron. 1 second, Vanessa was approaching, her heels clicking like a countdown. 2 seconds, Elara inverted the poison bottle, dumping the deadly blue velvet into her deep apron pocket.
3 seconds, she poured the harmless supplements into the amber glass bottle and twisted the cap shut. "Done yet?" Vanessa's voice rang out right behind her. Elara spun around, holding out the bottle, her face pale. That paleness actually saved her, appearing as fear of her mistress rather than guilt. Vanessa snatched the bottle, squinting at it for a second. Elara's heart stopped. Would she notice the blue was a shade lighter? Would she see the shell was different? Vanessa shook the bottle, heard the familiar rattle, and smirked. She told Elara to get out and order a light dinner for Julian, saying he needed to nourish his health for tomorrow. Elara retreated, feeling as though she had just walked a tightrope over an abyss. The moment the door closed, she slid down the wall, gasping for air. In her pocket, the poison pills lay silent, burning like hot coals. She had just swapped Julian Sterling's fate for a $10 handful of vitamins. Late that night, Elara slipped into Julian's room while he was feigning sleep. She didn't turn on the lights, only whispering into his ear that they were trying to poison him with a potent hallucinogen before the meeting. Julian opened his eyes in the dark, and Elara could feel the heat of his rage radiating from him. His hand gripped the bedsheets as he asked what she had done. Elara whispered that she had swapped them, placing a real poison pill in his hand as proof. She told him that now the bottle only contained liver supplements, but he had to perform. He had to take it in front of them and pretend to be affected until the very last moment. Julian clutched the tiny pill, understanding the risk. If she had swapped them incorrectly, or if Vanessa forced another pill on him, he was finished. But he looked into the eyes of the young girl who had just gambled her life to protect him. "I'll take it," Julian said firmly, "and I'll give them an Oscar-worthy performance." He looked at Elara, no longer seeing her just as an ally, but as his savior. Elara responded with a glint of mischief, telling him not to thank her yet, but to remember on stage that his strength didn't come from drugs, but from the truth and a little vitamin B12. That night, the Sterling estate was quiet, but no one truly slept. Vanessa dreamed of tropical islands and Swiss bank accounts. Marcus dreamed of the CEO's chair. But Julian and Elara, they didn't dream. They stayed awake to sharpen the blade of truth, waiting for the dawn to cut the throat of the greedy monster ruling this house. And tomorrow, that fateful day, would be a banquet no one would ever forget. A banquet where the main course wasn't wine, but retribution.
Do you know what the atmosphere of a medieval execution feels like? People gather, caught between fear and curiosity, waiting for the axe to fall. The annual shareholders meeting of Sterling Vineyards that day carried that exact energy, except instead of a muddy square, it took place on a meticulously manicured green lawn, and the spectators wore Armani suits, clutching crystal glasses while nibbling on smoked salmon canapes. The sun stood high over Napa Valley, casting a brilliant golden light onto the rows of pristine white chairs arranged before the mansion. This was the Predator's Feast. Ames, the representative from Omni Group, sat in the front row with his slicked-back hair and an industrial-strength smile, looking like a great white shark that had just caught the scent of blood. Beside him were the major shareholders, eager to dump their stocks for cash before the rumors of a mad boss sent prices to rock bottom. They didn't care about history or the sweat and tears of 3 generations of Sterlings. They only cared about ROI. This is the naked cruelty of American capitalism. When you fall, they don't help you up. They sell your saddle. Elara stood hidden behind the first-floor curtains, her heart drumming against her ribs. She saw Julian being pushed onto the stage by a nurse. He looked pathetic. His head hung low, his shoulders slumped in an oversized suit, and large dark glasses shielded half his face. Vanessa walked beside him, her hand on his shoulder, playing the part of the grieving, devoted wife so flawlessly it made Elara want to gag. Marcus Thorne stepped up to the podium, his voice booming with confidence. He adjusted the microphone, flashing a lethal, charming smile, announcing that while today was a sad day, it was also a day for new beginnings. He claimed that the tragic accident had severely impaired Julian's cognitive abilities. The crowd murmured with fake shakes of their heads and sighs of pity. Marcus drowned out the noise, announcing the merger with Omni Group, but stated that before signing, Julian wanted to say a few words. Marcus stepped back, making way for the wheelchair.
Vanessa leaned down, whispering into Julian's ear, not words of comfort, but a threat to say exactly what was on the paper or be sent to the asylum that very night. Then she performed her most crucial act, pouring a glass of water from the carafe, casting a subtle, knowing glance, and handing it to Julian. She spoke loudly for the crowd to hear her kindness, urging her darling to drink and clear his throat. The room held its breath. Elara gripped the curtains, her nails digging into the fabric. "Drink it, Julian, please, just drink it. It's only vitamin B12. Don't let them see you hesitate." Julian reached out, his hand trembling with exaggerated effort. He took the glass and brought it to his lips. Water spilled over the edge and down his chin, painting the perfect picture of a helpless, incontinent man. Vanessa hid a smirk, her eyes meeting Marcus's in triumph. He had drunk it. In 15 minutes, the drugs would kick in, he would start babbling about monsters, and it would be over. Julian finished the water and slammed the glass onto the table. The clack echoed through the microphone, as sharp as a starting pistol. He began to speak. His voice was a weak, broken rasp as he stared at the script Vanessa had prepared, murmuring that he was tired and wanted to rest. Ames, the Omni-Rep, nodded with satisfaction, pulling out a gold Mont Blanc pen, ready to sign. Vanessa stood behind Julian, her hand squeezing his shoulder as if to say, "Good dog." But then Julian stopped. He remained silent for about 10 seconds. The silence stretched into an uncomfortable void. The wind rustled through the vines. A crow cawed in the distance. People began to fidget. Then Julian lifted his head. Despite the dark glasses, the way he raised his chin no longer signaled exhaustion. His jaw tightened. His voice rang out, no longer a rasp, but deep, warm and resonant like a bronze bell, asking Marcus if the vines ever truly got tired. Vanessa gasped, her hand on his shoulder freezing. Marcus's smile vanished. This wasn't in the script. The drugs should have clouded his mind by now. Julian crumpled the speech in his hand and tossed it to the ground. He didn't need to see, he knew exactly where Marcus stood by the heavy scent of his cologne. He told the crowd they had come to buy a brand, thinking Sterling was just a name on a bottle, but he declared they were wrong. "Wine doesn't lie," he said, "only people do." Marcus barked at the technician to cut the mic, cold sweat breaking on his forehead, but the technician stood frozen, mesmerized by the chairman's transformation. Julian didn't need the microphone. His voice, forged through years of commanding thousands, exploded like thunder. He revealed that for 2 weeks he had sat in the dark, and when eyes cannot see, ears hear the very soul of the devil. He told them he had heard the deals to sell the land for a pittance and the laughter at the suffering of loyal staff. He turned toward Vanessa, who was turning pale with terror. She didn't understand why the drugs hadn't worked. Julian picked up a bottle of Heritage from the table, the sample Marcus intended to use for the toast, and held it up against the sun. He called it trash, asking Marcus if this was what he called a legacy. Vanessa shrieked that he was delirious and the drugs were making him lose his mind, calling for a doctor. But Julian was faster. He shoved Vanessa's hand away, a powerful, decisive move that sent her staggering back, nearly falling off the stage. The crowd gasped. How could a man paralyzed from the waist down have such strength? "No one steps foot up here," Julian roared. The authority of a king had returned, stopping the guards in their tracks. He looked directly at the stunned shareholders, asking if they wanted the truth about Sterling Heritage. He exposed the fake oak chips, the mega purple dye, and the artificial acid to cheat the palate. He revealed that Marcus had fired Mr. Henderson for refusing to brew this poison, and that Vanessa had been drugging him for 2 weeks to force a signature on a power of attorney. Marcus screamed that it was a lie, calling for security to drag him down, but it was too late. Julian placed both hands on the armrests of his wheelchair. Muscles rippled beneath his suit jacket. Elara, watching from the window, held her breath. "This is it. Show them, Julian. Show them who you are." The room was deathly quiet, so still you could hear a leaf fall. Every eye was glued to Julian's legs, the legs Vanessa had sworn to the press were permanently paralyzed. Julian took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the scent of the earth, the sun, and the fear of his enemies. He surged his strength into his legs. The wheelchair creaked, then slowly rolled back. And then, to the absolute horror and shock of hundreds, Julian Sterling slowly stood up, tall, steady, and full of rage. His shadow stretched across the stage, looming over Vanessa and Marcus like a collapsing tower. His dark glasses fell to the ground, revealing eyes as sharp as razors, staring at the traitors with a silent death sentence. The predator's feast was officially over. Now the prey had become the hunter.
Have you ever watched slow-motion footage of a skyscraper being demolished with explosives? It starts with a small blast, then cracks race along the frame, and finally the entire massive structure collapses into a cloud of dust. The moment Julian Sterling stood up from that wheelchair was that blast, and the faces of Vanessa DeLuca and Marcus Thorne were the buildings starting to crumble. The entire vineyard fell so silent you could hear the ice cubes melting in the guests' glasses. No one dared to draw a breath. Julian stood there, towering and imposing, his shadow looming over Vanessa, who was trembling like a leaf in a storm. His legs shook slightly, a remnant of weeks without walking, but his back was straight, radiating the lethal authority of a man returned from the dead. He whipped off his dark glasses and threw them on the table, revealing eyes that were sharp, lucid, and filled with a burning rage, piercing through the souls of the traitors. "Julian, you can walk?" Vanessa stammered, backing away, her heels catching on her gown as she nearly stumbled. Her heavily powdered face turned from pink to deathly white, then ash gray. She looked down at the empty glass on the table, then back at Julian, her eyes filled with absolute panic, whispering about the drugs she had given him. "You were so thoughtful to prepare my vitamins, weren't you?" Julian interrupted, his voice booming through the microphone, clear and deliberate. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out the small amber bottle Elara had given him. He held it high before the hundreds of shareholders and cameras, asking if she truly intended to turn him into a madman with 50 milligrams of hallucinogens, calling the drug out by its name, Blue Velvet. A buzz erupted like a disturbed beehive. Marcus Thorne, the cunning COO, immediately realized the tide had turned. He lunged forward, trying to snatch the microphone from Julian, shouting at the dazed security guards to cut the cameras and claiming Julian was hallucinating and making false accusations to ruin the merger. But before Marcus's filthy hand could touch Julian, a commanding voice rang out from the main gate, warning Mr. Thorne to put his hand down before it was forced into handcuffs. Everyone spun around. Walking up the gravel path was Arthur Goldman, a small Jewish man known as the Great White Shark of New York lawyers, followed by the Napa County Sheriff and 4 fully armed officers. Arthur wasn't smiling. He held up a thick file, announcing they had full evidence, including recordings of Madame DeLuca calls to Dr. Philbrick regarding the purchase of banned substances, and bank statements showing Thorne's transfers to Cayman accounts from company funds. Most importantly, he pointed to Julian as the direct witness. Vanessa let out a blood-curdling shriek and tried to bolt toward the mansion, but 2 officers quickly blocked her path. She was told she was under arrest for aggravated assault, conspiracy to commit murder, and financial fraud. The dry click of the handcuffs on her slender wrists signaled the end of her Caribbean dreams. She wailed and struggled, her heli mask falling away to reveal her true greedy nature, screaming that it wasn't her and that Marcus had incited her. She begged Julian to save her, claiming she loved him. Julian watched her being dragged away, his eyes devoid of emotion, simply stating that her love had too high a price and he couldn't afford it. But the drama didn't end there. Marcus Thorne, though deathly pale, tried to cling to his last lifeline. He turned to the Omni Group representatives who were standing up to leave, begging them to stay. He argued that regardless of Julian's private life, the Sterling Heritage wine was real, a masterpiece that held the company's value. He pointed to the sample bottle on the table, trying to salvage his final shred of dignity as a wine expert. Julian let out a smirk. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He didn't just want them in prison, he wanted to destroy their arrogant egos and show the world the naked truth. "A masterpiece?" Julian asked mockingly. He scanned the room, his gaze resting on a corner of the window curtains where a small figure stood holding her breath.
He told the crowd that there was someone there who knew more about that masterpiece than any of them, someone they had called a cellar rat and trash, but who possessed the one thing the entire board lacked: honesty. He waved her forward. "Elara, come out." All eyes turned to the window as Elara Vance stepped into the light. She still wore her old maid's uniform, her hands still wrapped in white gauze, but her head was held high. She walked between the rows of VIP seats, passing the people who just yesterday had mocked her while she wiped their shoes. No one laughed now. The way Julian looked at her, with respect and trust, had made her the most important person in the room. "That's the cleaning girl," Catherine Dubois whispered, covering her mouth. Julian handed the heritage bottle to Elara, asking her to tell everyone what it really was, while Marcus claimed it was a century of essence. Marcus snorted, trying to remain disdainful, mocking the idea of an uneducated orphan tasting wine before top experts. Elara ignored him. She took the bottle, poured a little into a glass, smelled it, took a sip, and spat it into a tasting bucket. She picked up the microphone, her voice trembling at first, but soon became as sharp as a scalpel. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elara said, looking straight at the Omni Group rep, "this wine has a pH of 3.9, far too high for a Napa Cabernet. To hide the harsh acidity from underripe grapes, Mr. Thorne added 2 grams of artificial tartaric acid per liter." She paused to let the information sink in. "Furthermore, this heavy vanilla scent doesn't come from French oak, it comes from toasted oak chips soaked in a tank, plus synthetic vanillin flavoring. And this deep purple color," Elara held the glass up to the sunlight, "is mega purple, an industrial dye. If you spend $50 million to buy this company, you are buying a factory for alcoholic soda, not a prestigious vineyard." "Liar! You're a liar!" Marcus roared, trying to charge at Elara, but Julian stood before her like a fortress. Julian then challenged the sharp-tongued critic, Catherine Dubois, to come up and taste it herself, asking if she was afraid the truth would stain her golden palate. Challenged before the crowd, Madame Dubois had no choice but to step up. She smelled it, frowning, then tasted it. The room held its breath. She swallowed, her face contorting as if she had eaten a lemon. She slammed the glass down, turning to Marcus with utter disgust. "She's right," Dubois declared coldly. "Mega purple, artificial acid. This is the filthiest trash I have tasted in 20 years. Marcus, you are a disgrace to the wine industry." That statement was the death sentence for Marcus Thorne's career. He collapsed into his chair, bloodless. Hisses and boos began to erupt from the crowd. The Omni Group investors stood up, snapped their briefcases shut, and left without a word, leaving Marcus alone on stage like a washed-up clown. The sheriff stepped forward to handcuff him for embezzlement and commercial fraud. As Marcus was dragged past Elara, he looked up at her with a mix of hatred and shock, unable to believe his empire had fallen at the hands of a girl he called a sewer rat. Elara looked back, not with glee, but with a strange calm, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "You were right, Mr. Thorne. Cellar rats live in the dark, so we see the things you choose to ignore." The stage was left only to Julian and Elara. The crowd began to clap, a sparse sound at first, but it soon grew into a roar of thunder. They weren't just clapping for Julian, they were clapping for the spectacular exposure they had just witnessed. Julian turned to look at Elara. The small girl in the oversized uniform stood there, her hands still shaking from the adrenaline, but her eyes were brighter than any diamond. He leaned down and whispered that she had done it, that she had saved them all. Elara smiled, her first real smile since entering this hell. "No, sir, we did it." The afternoon sun of Napa Valley shone down on 2 people standing amidst the ruins of an old dynasty, signaling a new era about to begin. But more important than the victory was the feeling of freedom, the sweetest vintage that no wine could ever match.
You know, as the last police cars left the gates of the Sterling estate, carrying away Vanessa, Marcus, and the fading wails of sirens, a strange silence settled over the valley. But this time, it wasn't the deathly silence of a tomb like the weeks before. It was the stillness after a rainstorm, when the dust has been washed away and the air is so crisp you want to fill your lungs to the brim. Julian Sterling stood there, leaning against a marble pillar, watching the red and blue lights vanish behind the oak trees. He didn't cheer or laugh. He simply let out a long, heavy exhale as his shoulders slumped. It was the sigh of a man who had finally shed 1,000-pound weight from his back. Elara stood beside him, still in her stained maid's uniform, but in Julian's eyes at that moment, she looked more powerful than any queen. The days that followed were a major surgery for Sterling Vineyards. Lawyer Arthur Goldman worked tirelessly to excise every remnant of Vanessa's reign. She and Marcus tried to plead for a deal, but with the mountain of evidence Julian and Elara had gathered, the judge refused. They were headed for prison, their assets seized to compensate the company. But the talk of Napa Valley wasn't the arrests, it was what Julian did next. He didn't hold a press conference. Instead, he hosted a BBQ in the backyard, inviting back every former employee Marcus had fired, including the elderly Mr. Henderson. Julian, once dubbed the Cold King, wore jeans and a t-shirt, personally flipping ribs and pouring beer for the gardeners. He told them, without a microphone, that he had been blind not only in his eyes, but in his heart, and apologized for their suffering, declaring that from now on, Sterling wasn't his company, but their family. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into applause more sincere than any gala could ever offer. As for Elara, Julian didn't keep his initial promise. He didn't make her the head blender immediately. Instead, he did something far more meaningful. He handed her a full scholarship to UC Davis, the world's most prestigious school for viticulture and enology. He told her she had natural talent, but he wanted her to have the knowledge so that when she walked into a lab, no one would ever call her a cellar rat again, but rather Madam Winemaker. Elara cried, because for the first time in her life, someone hadn't just given her a fish, they had given her the entire ocean. Time flew like the wind through the vine rows. 1 year later, Napa Valley entered harvest season once more. The sun poured down like honey onto the hillsides, and the air was thick with the scent of ripening grapes. The Sterling mansion was hosting a party again, but there were no sleek limousines or vain gowns. The guests were farmers, honest partners, and true wine lovers. The centerpiece wasn't Julian, but the debut of a new vintage, the first wine marking the rebirth of the empire. Elara Vance stepped onto the stage, no longer in a servant's uniform, but in an elegant white suit, her hair pulled back, radiating confidence and intellect. A year of university and sleepless nights in the lab had polished the raw diamond into something brilliant. She held a glass of wine, smiling at the crowd, telling them that while last year they tasted the bitterness of lies, today they would taste the sweetness of truth. She explained the wine used no mega purple or artificial flavors, aged 18 months in real French oak, made from grapes that survived the harshest drought. She signaled, and the velvet curtain fell away to reveal the new bottle. The crowd gasped. The label didn't feature a castle or a royal crest. It was a simple, delicate pencil drawing of a hand cradling a small, withered cluster of grapes. Beneath it, in flowing gold script, was the name, The Resilience. Master Blender, Elara Vance. Elara was stunned, looking at Julian in the wings, who wore the brightest smile she had ever seen. He had secretly renamed the line to honor her. Julian stepped out, took the microphone, and approached her. He told her that while fine wine takes time, it took him 34 years to find the most precious vintage of his life. He thanked her for coming to him when he was broken and bitter, saying she hadn't healed his legs with medicine, but had healed his soul with honesty and courage. He knelt down, not bowing to fate, but before the woman who had saved his destiny. He didn't pull out a massive diamond ring, but a gold-plated wine cork engraved with tiny words. He promised her that while he couldn't guarantee a life without storms, since winemaking is a gamble with nature, he would always be the sturdiest oak barrel to protect her. He asked Elara Vance to be his lifelong partner, to blend their future seasons of happiness together.
Elara burst into tears of joy and nodded, unable to speak, as Julian slipped the unique ring onto her finger. The valley exploded in cheers. Old Mr. Henderson stood in the crowd, wiping tears as he raised his glass. It wasn't a Hollywood ending, it was a real human ending. Friends, the story of Julian and Elara has come to a close, but its echo lingers, much like the finish of a premium wine. Their journey reminds us of an old but eternal truth. You can't judge a book by its cover. A flashy label like Sterling Heritage can hide poison, just as a stained servant's uniform can hide a golden soul and brilliant talent. Life is fair in its own way. You might feel like grapes being crushed under the feet of fate, but remember, without pressure, there are no diamonds. Without crushing, there is no wine. People like Vanessa and Marcus taught us that you reap what you sow. Greed might help you run fast for a while, but kindness and honesty are the wings that help you fly far. Your true value isn't in your bank account, but how you treat others when they have nothing left. How about you? Have you ever felt undervalued or overlooked because of your appearance or background? How did you overcome that dark cellar? Share your story or your thoughts on Elara in the comments below. I believe every shared story is a small flame that warms this community. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue this journey together. I wish you a peaceful evening. Live honestly and stay resilient, because believe me, the sweetest harvest of your life is waiting just ahead. Cheers.